individual who writes beautiful words but never means anything. We hear or see the grammarian who can construct a sentence perfectly, but the sentence never contains anything that will change the course of history. It is skillful but not purposeful. So this division, by separating and destroying the penetrating power of intensity, leaves the individual upon the twin horns of the Gemini dilemma. He is unable to determine anything, or he is locked in the polarized conflict of things. One of the good examples of that is the American Civil War, where we have the War of the Brothers. In ancient England, Lilly said that the United States was under the sign of Gemini, the twins. And we had the War of the Brothers. It is now nearly a century since that war, and yet we're still fighting it. And we're still struggling over it, and we're still trying to figure who was right and who was wrong. And we have a great many people who do not care who was right or who was wrong. They're on the other side, whichever it may be. We cannot let it die. So Gemini gives us another thing. It gives us this division, it intensifies prejudice, and then it never lets anything die. It keeps on fighting the war after everybody's dead. It keeps on winning the argument after everyone else has gone home. And it keeps on trying to figure out how it could have won the argument for days after it has lost the argument. Division. All this seems perhaps a little on the flighty side, but underneath it, there's a principle here. This principle of duality, which caused Pythagoras to spit upon the ground whenever the number 2 was mentioned, simply because it represented division. And wherever there is division, there is loss. That which the gods would destroy, they first divide. And wherever there is division, then there is need for reconciliation. And this process of reconciliation is itself a strangely subtle form of hypocrisy. Nothing seems to work out, because actually we are dealing with things substantially indivisible. Their unity must be acknowledged, not achieved by human defense. It is there to begin with, and we cannot defend it, we must discover it. There's a very peculiar problem which we have to go on to very carefully. Then we pass to the next type, where we gain the mysterious heritage of the moon. And the moon gives us the strange inheritance of moods. The moon gives us light and darkness. It gives us this strange inconstancy within ourselves. It caused Paul to cry out in his agony, "When I would do good, evil is ever nigh unto me." It causes the individual this strange weakness in his own nature, making him a servant of tides, making him moved upon surfaces which he cannot control, like a ship in a storm. And this strange moodiness of man, the mood of greatness and the mood of failure, the inability of the individual to depend upon himself, the inability of the individual to rise above the pressures of his own passing moods. So the hero must master his own moods. He must master the inconstancies by which one day he is for and another day he is against. He must pass beyond those moods which weaken him in time of need, moods which mean that his total resource is not available to him at any time. So the moon tells us that everything ebbs and flows, that everything seems to have beginning and end, and that everything is upon the sea of life, subject to generation and degeneration, life and death, birth and decay, these things moving in strange cycles, and in man these cycles infinitely repeating themselves, so that with every phase of the moon, man hopes or fears by pressures which he cannot understand. Thus man, fighting the moon, fighting this struggle within himself, is fighting the inconstancy of himself, fighting the insecurity in which he cannot depend upon his own nature to stand behind him. He must bring his own nature into line. He must conquer the shifting rays of the moon's phases. He must gain the ability to keep his light even when the moon becomes dark. So the moon has always been the symbol of the lesser light. It has been the symbol of man's hope, dream, faith, one moment strong and another weak, increasing, waxing, waning. And here man seeking constancy, seeking mastery over the excess of his moods, so that he shall do no thing too much nor too little, watching himself against the pressure which forces his idealism into vanity, forces his dedication into fanaticism, forces his determination to serve into hypocrisy simply by pressure. Because pressure can cause an individual to say the end justifies the means. The moment he has done so, the madness of the moon is upon him. Now after this situation, he meets the next struggle, in which he must overcome the lion and perhaps clothe himself in its skin. Yet in the ancient legends, he must slay the lion without a weapon. He must slay it with his bare hands, and he does so by breaking its jaw. This is the story of Hercules, and also the story of Samson. Now the lion is the home of the sun. It is the sign of energy. And to overcome or conquer the lion and clothe oneself in its skin is to overcome pride, overcome power, overcome force in its every aspect. For there is scarcely a moment in our days when we are not tempted to do something a little more strenuously than the ethics will permit. We have the feeling that with a little more force we can accomplish our end. We can overwhelm our adversary. We can sell that merchandise which he does not want. We can force. We can use energy, not for our own advantage, but for the disadvantage of someone else. And the moment energy transcends its natural usefulness, it becomes like gunpowder. Gunpowder may help to blast a dead stump out of a farmer's field, but it has also laid the world waste with war. Atomic energy may give us new sources of light and power and warmth, motion, but it can also wreck us. So that power within the individual, if harnessed to conscience, if bound to consciousness, as in the ancient fable of the young maiden binding the lion's jaws with her handkerchief, an ancient figure found sometimes on tarot cards. If gentleness can hold the power of the lion and the unicorn, we then understand something that is very important to us, namely that nothing that is good shall ever be attained by force. The moment you use force, the force becomes evil. Yet it is life without force, energy without pressure, action without aggression. These are the secrets that the ancients tried to tell us must be conquered and mastered and understood by the soul as it walks along the yellow road, offering itself as a gift to heaven. And we go on to the sign of the Virgin. And here we come to one of the most ancient symbols in the old zodiac system. And we find it curiously associated with one great keyword out of antiquity. The conquest of the mystery of the Virgin, the capture of the girdle of the Amazon, has to do with the mystery of service. The crest of the Prince of Wales in England is taken from the ancient Germanic in I serve. These were the last words of Kundry as she fell dead at the foot of the Grail. I serve. Service becomes one of the great problems of the labor. And to achieve service, one must understand the mystery of the world virgin. For service is actually bringing forth into life. That is the meaning of service. When we serve, we bring something forth into life. When we serve the need of our friend, we help to bring that friend forth out of darkness into light. All service is releasing life. In the ancient agricultural content or context, the Virgin carries the sheaf of grain, because if man serves the earth, it brings forth the harvest. Service, therefore, is making ready the way. It is perhaps sounded in the words of John the Baptizer, prepare ye the way of the Lord. For service is to prepare the way of life. Service is to prepare the way for those who do live. Service for the young is preparing them for life, preparing them to bring forth. Service of the strong, if we help a man in trouble, it is in order that we can assist him to bring forth out of himself those resources which are his true solution and which we cannot convey to him. Therefore, service requires great discretion. Service requires a wisdom almost beyond this world. But the symbol of service, for the Virgin, is the great question, what must we do in order to do good? And to answer that question requires practically all the wisdom of the ages. For usually our help is of a sentimental nature. We are kind, we are sympathetic, we do something. And because we do not know what we are doing or why we are doing it, we then sometimes come to a keen disappointment, for the person neither appreciates nor understands, and our good intention is imposed upon or exploited. It is because our good intention was not wise with the wisdom of the server. We do not know how to serve. So to struggle with the problem of how to help another, and at the same time not hurt him, for that is the rule, we must never hurt, reminds us again that the only way that we can serve another person truly, perhaps, is to help him to do those things which are nearest to his own soul. Try to find out what his need is and then help him do what he wants to do rather than what we want him to do. Otherwise, our service goes immediately into dogma and into despotism. But the problem of service, of sharing without hurting, of giving without impoverishing, those are the secrets of the mystery of the maiden with the sheaf of grain. And the next time we stop in the great zodiacal circle, we stand in the presence of the balance of Libra, the pair of scales tipped strangely and held by a strong angel with a blazing sword. And here man seeks the problem of equilibrium. For justice is always balance. Justice arises from fairness. Fairness arises not from a man's ability to see the two sides of a situation, because there are usually more than two sides. Justice consists in recognizing the law as it applies to all sides. Thus Pythagoras pointed out that virtue is not upon one end of the pan, one pan of the balance, and vice upon the other, and we do not weigh the living and the dead. Vice is at both ends, and balance or truth is in the center. And it is only the scale that balances that is true, and the only true part of the scale is the balance in the center. So man, searching always for survival, for truth, seeks equilibrium within his own consciousness, realizing that the moment he polarizes or unbalances, he will be unlawful. So to bring all extremes to moderation gives him justice, for justice is moderation.